and I'm glad that for their sake that it wasn't them beating Houston with an injured Jamal Shead, because then I do think there'd be a little bit of a, well, you know, and so there's not that, because Duke was the team that beat Houston. I know we'll get to Houston in the Big 12 here in a few, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say but go and finish the story and, you know, cap this off. But as far as, I guess if they had any doubters or haters or whatever, I mean, here they are, the proof's in the pudding, and they've gone on an incredible run this last month and made a lot of waves, and it's been incredible to watch. But, yeah, there's nothing fluky about it at this point. You don't go and win that many games in the conference tournament, and then the big dance the way that they have with, you know, just a little bit of luck on your side. You've got a good team to a great team, and they're showing that, and they're flexing their muscles, and to go and beat Duke and to be among the Final Four with an 11 hanging next to your name is something we usually reserve for schools that not many people even know exist half the time. Not an NC State, right? It's not usually a Power 4, Power 5 school necessarily. I always think of the George Masons or just somebody like that along those lines. But here they are, and you know, now a mighty task in front of them, but that's not going to scare them or intimidate them, as we've seen all too well these last few weeks.
So one of the things about NC State, and I saw a note, I think it's me versus Echo Chamber, Carla Jenkins as well, NC State, had they not won the ACC tournament, they wouldn't be here.
Right.
Virginia misses a free throw. That sews that game up, and then they bank one in, as you mentioned, off the board, and they get there. But that's, you know, they wouldn't have made it, and they didn't have the resume to make it. So that's what's great about the tournaments, the conference tournaments, and about the opportunity. You have a door that's cracked. Break it down, take advantage of it, and they have absolutely been able to do that.
Yeah, 3 at the buzzer to go to overtime, and well, otherwise you're not where you are. So yeah, that win over Virginia in overtime, bank shot at the buzzer was the play that, you know, you're going to see a lot of, I would think, over the coming days, and certainly when this story is told years down the line, that's going to be front and center of like how this all start, and that's going to be a big part of it. So yeah, took a little bit of luck, I guess you could say, to get in the spot, but nothing lucky about what they've done with that opportunity.
Absolutely. All right, we will have Rob Douster from the Field of 68. We'll have Nikki Collin again at 4, plus we'll look at the women's regionals tonight. Also, there's some news. Got to get into that Rashee Rice story with SMU, with the Kansas City Chiefs, and what's going on with that as well. And then also we will have Brian Newbert, who covers Purdue, the voice of NC State. All of that still to come today on this show. Now, before we break, and Carla Jenkins, you brought this up on the story about NC State carrying the ACC banner, and there were others, but they're the ones doing it. Be better than maybe the flagship teams, or however you want to call the Blue Bloods, whether Clemson or Florida State, Carolina, Duke, when it comes to basketball. And they're doing that, and the Big 12 needs to do that. And yet, Iowa State could not get it done. Illinois got them. And yet, University of Houston, injury or not, Duke got it done. I thought L.J. Cryer had a couple of bad moments with turnovers in the second half at critical times, but again, he had one hell of a year. This is when the Big 12 has to find a way, no matter the circumstances, and they did not, no matter how good they were during the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk all the noise about being the best team in the country, which they did,
best conference in the country, yeah.
The best league in the country, best conference in the country, then you got to go out and prove it. There's talking the talk and there's walking the walk, and the Big 12's done both lately. You've had a couple of recent national champions, but you know, if you want to be like the SEC of men's basketball or something along those lines, the SEC is not the SEC because they've got the biggest brands per se. Their perception and their power and all of that, some of that is historic. Some of that is just having a bunch of big schools. But a whole lot of it is that they won a bunch of national titles over the last 20 years. That's a big, if not like 90% chunk of all that, you know, propaganda that we hear at times is because of that. There's actually backing to it. And so if you're the Big 12, you've been able to do that recently. But, you know, in this case, ACC's got every right to feel like they're the best league based on the results and what we've seen in March. And I know there can still be some debate on that. But you know, that's what I'm saying about NC State is what you did in the tournament is great if you want to do like ACC, and you still do have bragging rights to some extent. But if they don't go win the title, then who cares about what you did in the tournament if your team doesn't go or team from your league doesn't go win it all?
chapter, but not the story.
Like, that's all great, but that's what I was saying earlier about like all the talk of like you would have thought they'd already won the title. That's the cherry. That's what everybody's going to talk about down the line is who won the championship, and that's why the SEC can talk the way that they talk and act the way that they act. And so the Big 12 has like shown that they want to be able to do that on the basketball side, and I think they've had the media backing. I think they've had the audiences. I think they've had the matchups. They've had star players, things like that. But they did not have a good showing whatsoever in this tournament. And Houston, in their case, I mean, look, Iowa State got beat by 3 in a very competitive game. That's going to happen. A lot of the teams that got beat by small margins, but you still got beat nonetheless. And then with Houston, I mean, the last hope, the Jamal Shead injury, I mean, how can you not say that made a massive difference in a game that you lose by 3 points, in a game where he wasn't available for the majority of it, and it was a 54-51 game? I mean, do they win that game if he's healthy? Yes, I fully believe that they do. We'll never know that. But regardless, you have to get around that. You have to still find a way, right? If you want to have those league bragging rights. And for the Big 12 this year, whether it was teams losing early or teams not being able to get to even the Sweet 16, it was a bad showing overall for the league. I don't think there's any doubt about that. If they had a team in the Final Four at least competing, you'd go, okay, that's good. But to not have anybody involved deep is not a good look for, you know, your whole mantra or your belief that you're the best league in the country. And that's where the ACC did see the crack in the opening and the door, and they kicked that sucker down, and now they're going to try to put their own door on the hinges. But yeah, not a good tourney for the Big 12 at all.
No, and it sucks that Jamal Shead didn't get to play in most of that game. It's awful. Amanda and I were watching the game, and she goes, well, they said that they're going to try to let him go back in. I'm like, they're not even letting him stand up when he claps. Like, no, he's not.
No,
like
he
was
out.
that was gamesmanship. Like Tracy Wolfton, comes on and says, well, they taped it up and they're hopeful he can go.
One of the announcers was like, I bet he comes back. And I'm like, no, he's not.
Like,
that's how much he was hurting, how much he was out, because he would have probably taken a leg off if he could have gone back in there and helped him play. But,
and there is that asterisk, like the league would have probably looked better had a Houston, had a Jamal. But you know what? That's part of the deal. So
grind through it.
Yeah, you got to grind through it. Injuries happen. And I do, though, I mean, take all the conference pride stuff to the side. That was just an awful thing to see for a very good Houston basketball team who was right there at the top of the rankings all year long, wins the Big 12. I mean, just a great team, and he's the guy, clearly the guy for the Cougs. And just the timing of that, the moment of it all, I just felt gutted for Houston's fan base and for Kelvin Sampson and that team, and just felt awful for Jamal Shead that here in this moment and your big opportunity to try and go win it all, and not having multiple opportunities to go and do this any longer, you've got an ending like that to your career. I think that sucks, and it's part of the game. I understand, but man, that was just unfortunate to see.
We almost had an NC State Houston rematch.
Yeah, that would have been something.
But did not. One quick note: the ACC was 12-3 against the Big 12, including the tournament.
13-3.
13-3. Okay, 13-3.
I thought I saw 13, but 12-3. That says it all, anyways.
Me and Echo Chamber